for joining us for our dual resides proposal. We're really excited to get your feedback. We've been providing focus groups throughout the last couple of weeks, and we want even more feedback. So we really appreciate you taking the time to review this proposal and to provide us anything additional that you may think of. My name is Cassie Blasi. I'm the Executive Administrator of School Choice. I'm joined by Amanda Averett-Bush, our Assistant Director of Student Assignment. As we go through this presentation, you're going to see a little bit about where we are currently with the student assignment plan, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges associated with that plan that led us to this proposal. Again, as you have thoughts and questions, concerns, please feel free to contact us via email or phone number as we've provided with this video. So we're going to get started in talking about the current high school boundaries and a little bit more about what we mean with regards to this proposal and some of the terms that we've used. So the first thing I want to point out is this black line that outlines this area of West Louisville, or what we're calling the study area. So within this area, the proposal specifically seeks to address student assignment. So another term that I want to point out to you is the term satellite area. And so you've probably heard that area or that term with regards to this area as well. To give you an example of what that means, when I say satellite, if you look at the areas marked for DOS, so 1, 2, 3, 4 separate areas, we term these as satellite areas because they're separate from the larger boundary for DOS, which is, if this were an expanded map, on the lower end in the southern part of the county. So because these are separate areas from that larger boundary, we call them satellite areas. So when we were looking at this map and thinking through some of the challenges associated with them, a couple of areas stood out to us. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit about those separate areas. What we found with those disconnected areas is that it actually broke up several neighborhoods and created a situation where neighborhoods were, there was no continuity or connection between the areas that were then assigned to schools elsewhere in the county. And so we saw that as problematic because that disconnected neighborhoods and communities. In addition, as you can see around here, the academy at Shawnee is actually surrounded by zones that are not zoned for that school. And so, for example, if you're living within a block or a 4-minute walk from the academy at Shawnee over here where my cursor is, you would actually be zoned for DOS, and you would have no option to access the academy at Shawnee. So we saw that as problematic because that's the same situation for several students surrounding the academy at Shawnee. In addition, if we look further at the academy at Shawnee's boundary itself, you'll see that it encompasses several different areas within downtown, as well as on the eastern side of I-65. What we found is that in that area downtown, there are really few students, if any at all. And then over here, east of I-65, you'll see that there are actually very few students who are zoned for this area who actually attend the academy at Shawnee. And so this has significant impact on that school's enrollment, and we saw that as problematic. In addition, one of the key areas of challenge for that map when associated with the middle school map, which we'll discuss later, was the feeder pattern situation. And so you'll see 50 different feeder patterns associated with that map in the middle school map. So essentially, to give you an example, you'd see if you were zoned in Carruthers boundary within the study area, you would progress through your 3 years of middle school. If you never change houses, you'll stay in the same school with your peers who live in the suburban boundary. Now, when it's time to move on to high school, your peers who live in the suburban boundary would naturally probably progress to either Jeffersontown High School or Fern Creek High School. But you, if you lived in that area in the study area, would actually progress to DOS. And so we saw this as problematic because one thing we know about building climate and culture and, connection between students and their peers, and, establishing a strong positive sense of belonging for students and engagement is that any disruption in that is very problematic for that student, and especially impacts that student's sense of belonging. And so we saw several examples of this across the entire county, as you can see here. And we saw that as problematic because essentially the system would create those disruptions in multiple different ways across the study area. In addition, and you'll see this again on this slide, there are many examples of students starting middle school on one end of the county, and then when they progress to high school, then continuing on the other end of the county, and vice versa. And so we saw that as problematic, simply because that creates difficulties for families in staying engaged with the school and being involved, especially if they have transportation challenges. So we're going to look at the current map, kind of zoomed out so you can get a better picture of a larger area of the county. And then we're going to go back and forth to show the proposal so you can see the differences. And I'm going to do this a couple of times just to give you an example. So that you can get your bearings, again, I'm going to point out, here's DOS, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then here's the suburban boundary. So again, you can see that disconnect and why we call them satellites, because they're separate. So this is our current student assignment plan, and this is our proposal. So I'm going to go back and forth so you can see it a couple times. Our current, proposed, and then one more time, our current, and then proposed. So a couple things I want to point out. The first is, like the example for DOS, I want to show you that boundary again. Instead of 4 separate, we're looking at one larger area. And so the thought behind this is that we would be able to include much more of a neighborhood concept as opposed to 4 separate areas or multiple separate areas, which would help in building continuity amongst a community. In addition, we looked at connecting certain areas within the study area with the larger boundaries that surround the study area. So for example, Seneca's area within the study area is connected to Seneca's larger boundary. In addition, we've got Atherton and Wagner, where we could do the same thing. And then finally, one of the things that we wanted to focus on as well, if you look up here in the northern part, you'll see this area is zoned for Ballard and Eastern. We tried to keep them along transportation routes that made sense in terms of efficiency. So you can see that they're located on that 64 onto 71 corridor, because that's where those schools are located elsewhere in the county. And then the same thing for Dawson Valley along that Dixie Highway corridor, so that transportation would be efficient. So when you're looking at this map, you have to keep 2 things in your head at once. So in addition to these individual school zoned locations within the study area, that's one choice that students in this larger area have. On top of this, you have to think about this entire outlined area being zoned for the academy at Shawnee. And that's where we get the dual choice, or the dual resides choice. So for example, if you live in Ballard's area up here in the northern part, in that area that's in brown, you would have a choice. You would choose either between Ballard High School or the academy at Shawnee. And you would have a choice for either. I'm going to give another example. So if you lived in this yellow area, you could choose between Doss High School or the academy at Shawnee. And so essentially it's an additional choice that provides a location closer to home or a location farther away. So now I'm going to turn it over to Amanda, who's going to talk about middle school.
Okay, so now we are looking at our current state for middle school. And when we're again talking about that study area, we are speaking are referencing the area within the black line. And so when we look at that, we can tell one of the first things that we can see is there is no direct alignment between our current middle school map and our high school map within our study area, which what that leads to is our 50 different feeder patterns because they are not, the boundaries are not aligned. And we also see a few challenges, just as we did with Doss. If you look at Frost Stewart, there are two different areas that are not connected within the study area. Again, creating a situation where neighborhoods or communities are separated that are zoned to the same school. You also, if you're looking at Highland, see this very interesting arm that's drawn from outside of the study area to inside. And what that creates is when you look, the boundary goes in to No, the physical building where No is located. So students do not have access to No that live within the neighborhood. And then it wraps around and touches Mazik. So the same situation is created where students within that neighborhood do not have access. Again, all of the schools within the boundary, they are called satellites because they are not connected to the larger boundary. So if you were to look at Frost, again, as that example within the study area, and then you look southern on the map, you will see the two areas where the larger suburban boundary is not connected to, of course, the boundary within the study area. So that is why we reference that as the satellite area. So now if we look, this is our proposal for middle school. And at first glance, you notice, if you think back a couple of slides, that this map looks exactly like our high school proposal. So now it provides that direct alignment within the boundary. And so let's look at the red area and see what that means for families. So if we look within the red area, what this would mean is for students within the middle school level, students would have an opportunity to either attend Crosby Middle School or the new Weston Middle School. And then in the same red area, students would either at the high school level be able to attend Eastern High School or the Academy at Shawnee. So you're able to do that with each area within our study area, which provides that direct alignment between the middle school and high school. And what that then gives us is we're now in a situation where we are able to look at our feeder patterns where we used to have 50 different feeder patterns for middle school to high school within the study area, now down to 11. So what that would mean is Crosby in our current state feeds into 6 different high schools. Now within the proposal, you have students within the study area transitioning to high school to Eastern High School within this one area. And so what that means for students is positive student outcomes, because now you're able to have that high school directly and intentionally working at that middle school, and they're focused on the individual school instead of it could be up to 6 different schools that they're working with. So that is able to provide vertical alignment between the high school and middle school, whether that's working on academic, with curriculum or programming, whether that's working with college and career readiness. We have a very robust college and career readiness program at our high school level with Academies of Louisville. And so now you have an opportunity to be intentional to work with the high school, even on an exploratory level for middle school students. And now, since we have those larger geographic areas, schools are able to focus within one area to build stronger relationships with students and families, to build those connections with community partners within one area. And so that intentionality is able to occur because we've been able to reduce the feeder patterns down to 11 from having 50 before. So if we see this map on the right, it's able to give you a good visual of now what that looks like to have that direct alignment between the middle school and high school and have the larger geographic areas covered. So again, you're able to see within the brown area that Camera is connected with Ballard. So what that would mean, again, is students within that area at the middle school level would have the option to attend either Camera Middle School or the new West End Middle School, or at the high school level to attend Ballard High School or the Academy at Shawnee. And that would be true for each of the sections that are noted within this map. So just a few details with logistics. Students that are currently attending schools, so they're attending a school in another part of the county, or they're attending a magnet school, or they're on a student transfer, students will not be disrupted. This proposal, if passed, will be implemented in the 2021-2022 school year. So what that would look like is current fifth graders and eighth graders for the 2020-2021 school year will be engaging in choice in the fall of this year to let us know which option they prefer, whether the option close to home or the option in another part of the county. We also have, if you look at the bottom of the screen, a school location device that we're able to utilize for families where you can type in your address and it will tell you what your current satellite schools are, and it will also let you know what your close to home option is and your new satellite or school in another part of the county. So you will be able to type in your individual address to receive that information. And so I want to also go through a scenario with you so you can see what this looks like for an individual family. So if a student lives at 1100 West Juvenile Street, currently, students in middle school are assigned to Highland Middle School, and that's going to be within the teal area if you're looking on the map. And for high school, the student within that area would be assigned to Fairdale High School. Again, you can tell that is in a different part of the county. And so when we're looking at the proposal, we are now looking at, for the middle school level, the student would be assigned to no middle school or would have the option to attend the new West End Middle School. And at the high school level, the student would have the option of attending Seneca High School or the Academy at Shawnee. Again, families will be engaging in this choice, and this will be an additional choice for families because we still have our other school choice options for families to explore magnet schools and programs, and also our student transfer application process.
So we wanted to give you a couple of frequently asked questions that Amanda and I have encountered along our focus group journey. And so as we go through these, you may be thinking of these and more in addition to what we have on the screen. And so again, I really encourage you to use the email and the phone number to reach out for additional support on this, as those contact information will be included with this video. So let's start with the first one. What supports will be available at the close to home options? And so this question has come up quite frequently throughout our focus group time, specifically thinking about how are we going to better support our schools in West Louisville and what are we going to do? And so we have a team that's working on this question exactly, and a proposal will accompany this proposal for the dual resides plan, specifically speaking to those supports. Some of the things that we've included in terms of data is we had a parent survey that asked this question specifically. What would you like to see with in terms of supports or in terms of programming and opportunities at those schools? And so we're taking that information into account as we build that proposal. The second question, where will the middle school option be located? So this proposal is accompanied by an additional proposal to build a new West End middle school. And so what that looks like is, as this proposal is brought to the local Board of Education, it will have also the opportunity for the local board to approve the building of a new school. And then that triggers a series of events that happens in the building of a new school. It is very likely that we will need transitional space in order to fulfill the demand for that middle school area. We are also looking at space at the Academy at Shawnee and other options, but what we're really looking for as well is how much demand will there be? And so that parent survey will also be very important in assessing that demand.
Another question that has come up within our focus groups is, how will families choose their option and what is the process? So I take families back to how we ask or have our families engage in the kindergarten application process. So currently all students who are applying for kindergarten engage in that process. And so we are looking to have a similar process to ensure that we are honoring the choice of families. Students will not be assigned to the close to home or the further away options. Families will engage in that process. And so families will let us know that option in the fall to prepare for the 2021-2022 school year. And so also another question that has come up is there a guaranteed spot at both schools, or will there be a cap on enrollment? And so we have worked very closely with our consultants to ensure that students have an opportunity to attend either the school close to home or the school further away. And so there is a guaranteed spot for both. Families will be engaging again in that choice, and that assignment would be for that academic school year. If the family again wanted to make a different choice the next school year or explore student transfer in the middle of the year, that is an option for families, but there will not be a cap on enrollment. And another thing that I wanted to make sure to explain is this is going to be phased in. So it is starting with sixth graders and ninth graders for the 2021-2022 school year, and it will progress each year after that.
So we wanted to thank you one more time for taking the time to watch this presentation, to think through your questions. We know you have just absorbed a lot of information. And so again, we'll have both an email address and a phone number that you can reach out to that will accompany this presentation, so that if you want more information, we are more than happy to either schedule an additional Zoom or respond to you via email. Again, thank you so much. We really appreciate you spending the time with us, and please send us your questions and your thoughts. Thank you.